Hello everyone. So in this video tutorial, we'll be learning about how to set up Sublime text for competitive programming. So of course, different text editors are there. There are lots of text editors out there. You can try any of the text editors which suits you. But personally, I prefer Sublime text. And of course, I would recommend you Sublime text for it. You'll come to know more about Sublime text in this video and you'll understand why was I asking you for Sublime text to like start competitive programming in Sublime text, right? So first of all, let me quickly, so let's open a new window in Sublime text. So this is a normal window for Sublime text. So this tutorial is only about setting up Sublime text, right? So this Sublime text, right now I'm using Mac, so it can be for Mac, it can be for Windows, it can be for Linux device, right? So Sublime text is available for all three. I've used in all three too, right? So it just describes how you can set up Sublime text for competitive programming, right? Installing GCC for C++, or Python, or right, that you should try yourself. How to install the different compilers so that different languages run on that, right now I'm just showing you how to set up Sublime text for competitive programming so that it becomes easy for you to use it, right? And also I'll be using it in the future videos, right? So yeah, so guys, this is a normal blank screen from Sublime text. What I need to do is what I would want to do is that I don't want to open certain other videos, certain other tabs or windows, so that I write code in some other window, I run code in some other window, I give input in some other window and get output in some other window, right? That would become too hectic for me. For competitive programming, you need to save time, right? So what would be better if you just write code in the same window, you put the input in the same window and you show the output in the same window, right? So that's what we are trying to set up here. And let's move ahead with this. So firstly, what I have done is, yep. So firstly, what we'll do is we'll make a folder on the desktop called uh, competitive programming codes, CP codes, whatever you wish. And what we'll do is we'll have three files, right? The first file is new.cpp. So let me open this. So right now, let's say it's an empty file. Cool. And let me save this too. The second file will be input.txt, in which you will be writing out your certain codes, right? And the third file, input.txt is a file in which you will be copying down your input, and the third file that I'll have in the same folder, right? So guys, just consider this as a warning that you have to include all these three files. The file in which you are coding, that is new.cpp, the CPP file, C++ file for me. The second is input.txt file, in which I'll be copying down the input, and the output.txt file. What is this output.txt file? So the input, the code file will take input from input.txt, whatever I have given the input there, and write the output.txt to the output.txt file. It will write cout to the output.txt file. Cool. Now let us see how to make some certain columns, because right now also if I try and code it out here, I like, let's say I code something here, right? Of course I'll be like showing you how to make some Sublime snippets that will ease our work, right? So if I code something here, then also I need to switch windows, right, to see input and output, but I don't want to do that. I want everything to be in the same window. So what I'll do is I'll find quickly go to edit in the Sublime text and or file. Okay, so I'll go to view, right? So we have this view over here in the Sublime text taskbar, and in this view what I'll do is I'll go to layout and choose columns. So I'll say 3 columns. Cool. So here you can see that I've got 3 different columns in my Sublime text view. I'll put output in the third column, take input and like scroll it or move it to the second column, right? And the first column contains a new.cpp file. So guys, right now also it is very easy for me to write some input in the input.txt file so that I can get output in the output.txt file, right? It suits me. but as we can see, the code length won't be going much, right? Because if I write something really long, let's say some good recursive relation or some lengthy dp sign or some condition check statements again and again, so that would go in the next line, right? But what I want to do is because guys, we know that input are for like for our understanding, for our examples, inputs are very small, right? I want to write a very small input in input.txt and get an output for output.txt for all the for all the sample input outputs given in the problem statement, right? So as we know, those are really small. See, some of you can prefer this setup, right? But let me show you some other way to do this. So what I'll do is go to groups, right? And what I'll say is I'll say max columns is equals to 2. Earlier what we did was we went to layout, we did 3 columns, right? Layout columns 3, but now we are going on groups and we are saying max columns is equals to 2. So now what happens is, so the maximum number of columns is equal to 3, but the total columns are 2, right? So maximum columns were equal to 2, but the total columns is equal to 3, right? So for that we can easily see, so we have adjusted input.txt here and we have adjusted output.txt here, right? Now let us see how to take input from input.txt and write input to output.txt and write output to output.txt. Cool. So this is a normal function, and what I'll do here is I'll just write some FRE open is a method of C++. It opens a file. So what I'll say is open a file called input.txt. Cool. Why am I saying input.txt? Because input.txt is right over here on the right hand side here, and it's in the same folder as in new.cpp file. See guys, if input.txt is not in the same folder, is not in the same directory, if I talk in terms of computer science, if it is not in the same directory, then you have to mention the whole file path in this particular string value, right? The second value will be that you have to read, the R is for read and W will be for write, right? And you have to read the input.txt input from input.txt to standard input. So these are the 3 terms: open the file input.txt, read the input, that is standard input, cin, stdin, right? The second will be open the file called output.txt. So guys, it's a one-time setup. You don't have to set it up again and again in every code. Just a one-time setup, and it will benefit you a lot, right? Write a file to stdout, that is standard output. Cool. So now let's check this. So let's say I have taken n, let's input n and let's see out n. Cool. And let's say the n value is 10. So let me build this. Right. So what we saw was what happened. I initialized a variable called int n. It inputs that value from the input.txt, what is the first value is given here, and it outputs in the output.txt file. So guys, why am I showing you this tutorial? Because I'll be using this setup for the whole course, right? So for the whole course, I'll be using this Sublime text with the same settings, with same everything, input.txt on the right hand side, output.txt on the right down side, and these 2 lines, right? So before moving ahead, I would like to, okay, so in the next video we'll see how to set up snippets in Sublime. So guys, there's one important point that you need to notice is that whenever you submit your codes on different websites like Codeforces, CodeChef, or AdCoder, or wherever, right, then that compiler will also search for input.txt file because you have submitted the whole code there, right? So the judge that is behind those websites will also search for input.txt and will search for output.txt. So to bypass that judge, we use if and def, right? So okay, I think I'll be continuing to that in the next part, in the next video. And this so this is how you can set up Sublime. In the next part, we'll just see how to make snippets in Sublime. That will really help us, and how to let's say define some terms, and we'll also see if and def and other things, right? So cool. See you in the next part, guys. Thank you. Hello everyone. So some of you might have faced this error in Mac OS, or every time you update the Xcode. What happens is that Mac OS uses Clang as its compiler, but generally we have GNU C++ CPP compiler, which already has this bit slash std C++ file inside the directory, but Clang does not have it, right? So that's why we face this issue, which it says that one error generated that this file is not found. Which file? Bit slash std C++.h, right? So how did I fix it? Let me show that to you. So firstly, on the terminal, I ran the code gcc version. I got the link for that that where it is actually stored. So I copied the path. Let's copy the path. Cool. Let's copy it till C++. No problem. And then what we'll do is we'll just open Finder. Okay, let's open Finder. Right. So this is Finder, and what we'll do is we'll just go to a folder. We'll just paste this link. Okay, and now we are in the directory where it is using the C++ compilation, right? Where are the actual files of it located? So we'll go in the v1 part, and now here we can see that we have all types of stdio.h, stdint.h, string.h. Yeah, right, we can use them individually, but what we have to do is we have to combine all of them at once, right? So for that, how we'll do is we'll simply create a new folder here, which is okay, let me write the password, right? So this folder, let's call it bits, right? So let's open this folder. Cool. So before this, let's move back, copy another file, .h file, and let's paste it, right? Let's rename this file to stdc++.h. Now what we want to do is I want this file to have all the headers, right? See what string has. This is what string.h has, right? So much inside it, right? Of course you can understand it if you want to. Then let's move on to so I got this link on Stack Overflow, someone's repository, right? And here he has just copied all the header files for C and all the header files for C++, right? So let's copy the header files for C++. Cool. Sorry. Yeah. So I've copied this. Now what we need to do is we just have to paste all the header files inside the new file that we have made, the stdc++.h file. Let's copy this, save it, close it, and so here you can see inside the v1 we have bit slash std C++.h. Now let's build this. Cool. So now we are it's the build is working completely fine, right? Cool. So now this works. Now you can easily submit it. You don't have to comment or uncomment it again and again, right? So thank you everyone. See you in the next part. Okay, so guys, generally what happens is when you submit a code on an online judge, then it will also check for this FRE open and all those things. So if you do not know what is an online judge, I hope you have heard about the website called Spoj, where we have some very classical problems for computer programming and algorithms too. And what is Spoj? It is SPOJ. OJ means online judge. Similarly, A2OJ, right? So there are various online judges out there. You can like stick to one and try out whole of it. So what is an online judge? When we submit our code, we see that the code goes to an online judge. What does that judge do? It runs our code on input.txt file, and it runs a code on the sample input test cases and outputs the like judges the output from the output.txt file, right? So it basically judges input and output, that whether the code is printing right thing or not. So for that, what we do is we use if and def, right? So that these two lines only work in my local compiler, and it does not work in the online judge, right? So here I have some new terms called if and def, right? Let me explain you this. It's very easy, not a big deal. So I hope we all know about what is a define. So whenever like we want to define something, we write it over here like this. Let's say define a par, right? And what we can say is we can define a par as something. Let's say a par as this, right? So okay, so yeah, so we can define a par as something, but what I'm doing is I'm not defining a par as something right now. I'm just giving an example of if and def, right? So as we saw, let me build this. As we saw, input 10, it gives me an output 10. Let's say I'm printing output n plus 1, right? Now what I want to do is I say if a bar is not defined, let me write it. If and def. If and def means not defined. So similarly we have another term called def, which is if def. That means if defined. Cool. So if and def, that means if not defined, or and let me write a bar, right? Then simply go to this int n, input n, cout n, and here we'll write and if. That means okay, the if has ended, like we used to do in Python and all. Cool. So what happens is, let me build this now. What I see is I do not get any output over here. Why, guys? Because it says if a var is not defined, then only run this piece of code. So what will an if and def do, guys? It will not even compile this code if a var is not defined. It will directly check for a var if it is defined above somewhere in the code. If it is defined, if this term, the second term is defined, then only this particular piece of code will be compiled. Otherwise it would not be compiled, right? So if I don't write n over here, what happens? Let me build this. So I get an output. Cool. So similarly what I can do is this way, let me change it a little. So there are some Sublime shortcuts, like as I did just now. It is command plus control, and we go up and down. We can like drag some things, right? We can duplicate lines. So there are some small shortcuts. I want you to learn them all because I'll be using them all, and they are really handy. They like save your time for copy pasting and editing, right? So okay, so let's say I want to print only if print is defined. Cool. So if defined print, then only cout n plus 1, right? So print is defined, guys, but let's say if print is not defined, let's say var, right? So now the print is not defined, so it will not print anything because this part of code is not even compiled. So if it is not compiled, compiler will not go and execute this part of line. Cool, guys, I hope you understood what does if and if def means. So now let us move this over here. Cool. And if. So what happens is whenever code runs in an online judge, so it is an online judge, right? So what happens, we don't have to define online judge in our particular code, so we won't be defining anything. So now, guys, what happens if online judge is not defined? See, if you can easily see that if and def online judge, that means if online judge is not defined, then simply open this and open this, read input, write output from here to here, right? So this works really well on at my local level, right? So this is working really well in my local level. So what happens if I submit a code? When I submit a code to any online judge, so guys, like CodeChef, Codeforces, all these websites have an online judge behind them, which is actually judging their codes, right? So what happens in those online judge is defined, right? Whenever an online judge runs a code, the online judge is defined. So I'm not talking about all those judges out there, but yes, mostly in CodeChef, Codeforces, it will work, right? But if you want to like submit on HackerRank or HackerRank, then you need to comment all these lines out, right? So I'm just giving you a simple hack to use input.txt and output.txt in, and the code in the same window, right? So if online judge is not defined, simply open this and write this, right? And also we won't be ever defining online judge in our code, right? So this works. So right now what I'll do is I'll simply run this and I'll simply remove this, right? So guys, this is the part where you don't have to do anything. Now what I'll do is I'll simply make a snippet of this, right? So before making a snippet of this part, let me okay, cool. So before making snippet of this part, what I want you to understand is that in competitive programming, what we do is we actually use, cool, let's do that in the next part, no problem. Let's make a snippet of this, right? So in the next tutorial we'll snip it, and after that we'll see how to define some really handy shortcuts that we'll be using, right? So thank you, guys. See you in the next part. Okay, so in this tutorial we'll be learning about how to make Sublime snippets. So first of all, what I need to do is to make a good Sublime snippet. And let me tell you what are snippets. So what will a snippet do? Just when you just like, let's say you press some 4 buttons and like a key, a trigger key in Sublime, then you'll get the whole code, right? Just by pressing some keys. What it is actually mapping a key from a keyboard, like, or a set of keys or a string to a particular big code that I want, right? So what happens is, let's say I quickly coded a question and then I want to code the next question, right? So what I'll do is I'll simply erase everything and open my new snippet, right? So this works as my new snippet, guys. So I guess everyone is very familiar with this. So it's very easy, guys, this new snippet. And there isn't much to do. Whenever I want to code a particular problem, this is a header file which contains all the other header files. So this is a pretty standard stuff, int main, and finally if and if online just. So this is my setup, right? A normal CP setup, right? Of course I can use int, long int, I can define other things that we'll be discussing in the next part, right? But before that, let's make a snippet of this so that whenever I press some keys, I get this whole code in front of me, right? So let's select it, let's copy this, and after copying this, what I'll do is I'll like go to tools, right? Here in tools we can see there's a new option called developer. In developer, I'll go to new snippet. Cool. So this is the window we'll get in the snippet part. So guys, what happens is whatever I've copied, I'll simply select this line, hello is a something line, before down content at line 3, at line 4, and the content at line 2. I'll select this whole line on line number 3. I'll simply paste it, right? So whatever I selected, whole code, I'll simply paste it, the snippet of which I want, and I'll simply uncomment this tab trigger by pressing command and slash. Or what you can do is you can simply remove this too, right? And so right now default tab trigger is hello. So if I press hello, I'll get this whole code, but I don't want to press hello. What I'll say is I'll simply press, let's say, CP simple. Cool. So CP simple is my keyword, a tab trigger, if I want to find out, if I want this whole code in front of me at that particular instant, right? Let me save this. So it will just save it in the Sublime text user file, right? And what I'll do is I'll simply say CP simple dot, and we can easily see there is this extension of Sublime snippet, right? So CP simple dot Sublime snippet. I'm saving it with the same name. Cool. So let's save it. So I've saved this, as you can see it is CP simple dot Sublime snippet. Let's go back. Let's erase everything, right? Now we'll write CP simple, right? So instead of writing CP simple, I just press simple CP and pressed tab. You can also press enter and you'll get the whole code. So no matter whatever I'm coding out here, let's say I'll written something and like the whole code is there, I submitted it and it got accepted in my contest, right? Now I want to erase everything and I don't want to write all of this again, right? So what I'll do is I'll simply select all, press CP, I'll get CP simple, press enter. Cool guys. So this is a normal working, and now you can write your code here. Take your input accordingly, write to your output accordingly, and do the rest of the work, right? So this makes our life easier, right? And it's not only about this, guys. What I can do is we can make other snippets too, right? So let's say after in the course, let's say you are studying about segment trees, fanfic trees, advanced data structures. You can make these snippets. Instead of writing whole segment tree, fanfic tree again and again, you just make their snippets, use their snippets in the code, and save time, right? So the more time you save, the better, the more time you will get to think in the contest, right? So what we want is we want more time to think in the contest and less time to code, right? So this was about snippets, guys, and in the next part we'll be discussing about some defines. Cool. So see you in the next part. Cool guys. So right now let us go inside some shortcuts and some tips and tricks that we should use, but it's not mandatory to use, but yeah, we should use to save time during the time of contest and other stuffs, right? So what I want you to understand is that it's not necessary for you to do it, right? It's not mandatory for you to follow this particular video tutorial. But yes, if you do, it might give you some insights of how to like save time and uh, get more in CP, right? Because in competitive programming, we want to work more on the logical part. We want to work more on the logic thinking, logic building part, right? Instead of uh, code part, right? So we want to work less on code. Let's say there's a problem. I want to work 20 minutes on the logical part. I want to think for 20 minutes, but I just want to code it out in 5 minutes. If I've got the logic in my mind, I want to code it out in just 5 minutes, not more than that, right? So to code it out in 5 minutes and to avoid some errors, I'll be using some small tips and tricks. So you can use them wisely. It's like a bonus video for you. You use it or you do not use it. It depends on you, right? The first thing is, guys, that this particular int, so whenever I take int, I take a variable called int. So what is its limit? Its limit is like 2 to the power 31, right? We all know what are the ranges of ints and long ints, characters, strings, right? But guys, what happens is I do not want my int to be of length 10 to the power 9 only, right? I want it to extend to 10 to the power 18, right? So what I can do is I can simply, let's define it here only. Let's define int as, okay, let me give a space. Let's define ll as long int. So instead of writing long int, so what is a long int? See guys, these are like basic parts and I'm not going deep into this. Long int has a range of 2 to the power 63, that is approximately 10 to the power 18, right? So that's the maximum an integer can hold in that's a maximum that a long integer can hold in C++, right? So you won't be like printing answers more than these many digits ever, right? So if you want to use long int, you can define ll as long int and simply now define lln, right? And let's see out in. As you can see, it will give me a garbage value initially. So let's define it till 1e18. What is 1e18? 10 to the power 18. What will be 2e18? 2 into 10 to the power 18, right? Let's print this. So what I'm getting an integer of length 18, right? So it is 10 to the power 18. But if I don't define this ll, let's say I just write int over here. So this won't work, right? Why? Because it will give me an error value. It will give me a wrong value, a garbage value, a dumb value. Why? Because the length of n is till approximately 10 to the power 9, that is 2 to the power 31, right? So it won't be storing numbers more than that, that is 118. So the maximum length of integer in this is int max, right? You can't store integers more than this, that is 214748 3649. Can't store more a value more than this in a integer variable. You need a long integer variable. So this is a int max. It's a inbuilt constant value in C++. You can use it directly. So it is 2 to the power 31 minus 1, right? So as we can see, 7 for a reason, right? And there are like other ways also. Let's say okay, so we'll do this later. As I said, guys, let's define it back. Now guys, what happens is when we define ll as long int, generally our habit of writing integer, we get a bad habit of writing ll instead, right? But what I want to do is I want to write int only and use long int, right? So for that, what I can do is I can simply define int here, that is define int as long int. Now wherever I write int, we'll get a long int, right? So that my habit of writing int doesn't go away, so that whenever I face any interview in which I'm trying to code something out, at that particular time I don't use ll, because it's not a good habit, not a good practice to use ll in interviews and other stuff, right? So I want my habit of writing int to be there, but as we can see, we got an error. So let's check this error. Okay, so we have int written over here too, that is at line number 7. In line number 7, if I have int written here, that means it's a long int. right? So we know that whenever a compiler searches, whenever a compiler starts its execution, it starts from the main function, right? So if it starts from the int main function, right? So if this function is returning a long int, as we know that now int has become a long int, right? If I like try something, like try to return something over here, it will return a long int, but that's not what the compiler wants, right? So what's the error? Main must return int. Cool. So right now main is returning a long int because int is defined as a long int. So what we'll do is I'll cast it back to 32-bit int, right? So a long int is a 64-bit int, right? 64-bit means it has 64 bits to store the integers. That's why the range of 2 to the power 64. Right now what I'll do is I'll convert it back to the 32-bit int t, right? So what I'll do is int 32 underscore t. So again guys, this is again a variable in C++. It's also in C. And what does this do? It means int 32t means int only, a normal int, right? So it means an integer, nothing else, right? So I'm just converting the long int back to this particular part so that we return a 32-bit integer only from the int main, right? So let's build it again guys. Right, so now we can easily see that I have an integer defined over here because an int means a long int, and that integer is storing a range of 10 to the power 18. So as I said guys, it's a hack, right? It's not a good practice to do this, right? What's the best practice to do it? If you want numbers of more than 10 to the power 9, if you want to use more numbers than integer can hold, then simply use long int, right? That's a good practice, but it's a normal hack just to save your time and so that you don't waste your time in these small stuffs, right? So I hope you understood this part, that why am I using integer over here, why am I using int over here, but it is still storing a length really big. Cool. So this is the first part guys. Now the second part is I don't want to okay, so I think the rest part is also not mandatory. Let's say I'm defining some terms here. I define fs first. So what happens is whenever I'm using a pair, right? A pair in a vector or a pair array. So a pair has a first and a second term. So instead of writing first first or second second again and again, I'll simply use f or s, right? So let's say s second, and okay, so generally we use vectors, and in vectors we use pushback, right? What I'll say is I'll also, okay, so let's define pb as pushback. So these are some small hacks that you can use, right? But it's not mandatory, just for those who really want to use this. And also guys, you can define it on your own purposes, like whatever is, if there's a variable that you use very often and you want it to be reduced to be defined into some other thing, you can use it directly. So people also use type defines instead of defines, which define a particular type. Like you can define a vector int as vi, so we'll be using type define there, right? And so on, right? So if you see some other codes, you will see a lot of defines already there, right? So what people do is, okay, I'll show you an example in the next video of different defines that people use, but here are few of them that you can use. Cool. So I'll be using only these four. I think I won't be using any else. So let's make a snippet out of this, right? So let's copy it, tools, developer, snippet, and I'll make this as cp snippet, not cp simple snippet, cp, right? And let me save this. So it is cp dot sublime snippet, cp dot sublime snippet. Great. Cool. And now what I'll do is I'll say cp. Cool. And what is my cp simple? This is my cp simple, and this is cp. Okay, so that's it guys. See you in the next part.